Some people have a fixed mindset. They think their qualities, their intelligence, are carved in stone. You have a certain amount and that's that. And these people worry about how much they have. They need to be right, they need to be brilliant, and they're always on that groove. Other people have what I call a growth mindset. They believe their basic qualities can be cultivated, developed throughout their lives, and they're in it for the growth, the learning, the adventure, not just to look smart. We often study in our research people making a transition, whether it's students making a transition to middle school or college, whether it's older people making a transition, because these are key points in people's lives when their mindsets really matter. If you have a fixed mindset, you're entering these transitions thinking, am I going to succeed or fail? Am I a winner or a loser? And you have to prove that you're a winner. But if you enter these transitions with a growth mindset, you think, here are some great opportunities. I may be anxious, I may be nervous, but I'm going to give it my all and learn lots of new things. That experience is really interesting because often people are really good at something. They confront a new topic or a new challenge. They don't do well at first, and suddenly they think, I'm not good at it after all. They either escape from that arena, or they try to cover up their failures, or they just perform in order to look good and not look bad. But within a fixed mindset, that whole orientation toward learning can go out the window. How do you break a fixed mindset? Well, one thing is to recognize that many of us grew up with a fixed mindset. That was the wisdom of the day. Many educators thought IQ was fixed. Brain scientists thought the brain, that was just something we were given, and some people had better brains and some people had worse brains. But the new neuroscience is showing us something completely different. That basic things like intelligence can be taught, not just in kids but in adults, and that the brain has tremendous plasticity throughout our lifespan. So the growth mindset is receiving more and more confirmation from brain science. That's how I would start telling people about a growth mindset. The other thing is to teach them the various components of the growth mindset. In a growth mindset, not only do you believe that your abilities can be cultivated, but you welcome the effort. In a fixed mindset, the belief is if you have ability, you shouldn't need effort. That genius takes you automatically to success. And here research is playing a big role too. The newest research is showing that great successes are people, yeah, they had talent, but they worked harder than anyone else. They didn't coast on their talent. They addressed their weaknesses. They learned from their failures. So, over and over, people in a fixed mindset will say, oh, they saw someone way better than they were. Maybe they played guitar, but they saw Jimi Hendrix, or they played tennis and they saw Nadal, and suddenly they just lost all their motivation. What they think in a fixed mindset is that those people were naturals, that it just came to them because of their enormous talent, and since it wasn't coming to them as readily, they must not be as talented and they will never reach that level. What they don't realize is that Jimi Hendrix or Rafael Nadal put in thousands of hours of practice and learning to get where they are. And that if that person wanted to try for it, they'd have to do the same thing. Now, what's so interesting here is that Jimi Hendrix, being left-handed, could have said, well, no guitars are made for me. I guess that's it for me. Or Jerry Garcia could have said, well, I'm missing a finger, so I can never be a great guitarist. Instead, both of them created new sounds that everyone then imitated because they had this idea that they could learn, they could use what they had and develop it to the fullest, and they did. Silicon Valley founders are not afraid to fail. That is a key characteristic of the growth mindset. In fact, they say that when they fail, they're learning to succeed. They're gaining the experience that they need for their ultimate success. In a fixed mindset, failure means you're not a genius. Failure means there's something wrong with you. It's humiliating. It's to be swept aside as soon as possible. That attitude really curtails your success in the long run. How can people change from a fixed to a growth mindset? In my book, incidentally called Mindset, I have a chapter on how people can take those first steps toward change. But I also have a chart that juxtaposes the different characteristics of the two mindsets. And I suggest that people Xerox the chart, blow it up, and paste it on their mirror, because in the fixed mindset, it's about looking smart, always documenting that you've got the goods. But in the growth mindset, it's about capitalizing on what you have, growing it, and learning. Mistakes mean, in the fixed mindset, you don't have it, and you've got to cover them up. But mistakes in a growth mindset, they're just vehicles for learning. Effort in a fixed mindset means, well, you must not be a genius if you really have to sweat. But in the growth mindset, it is the way to develop your abilities and reach success. In a fixed mindset, other people's successes are undermining. But in a growth mindset, they're inspiring, and they're people you can learn from. So step by step by step, people need to keep these in front of them and catch themselves when they're falling into that limiting fixed mindset. I have really noticed this supportive atmosphere here in the Bay Area. People really share their expertise. They get very excited about each other's enterprises. They form collaborations. They spread the word. There is such a different atmosphere here. It's hard to exist here and not be energized and inspired. If you are, say, a stroke victim and have lost function, and you do things repetitively, difficult things repetitively, you can create new pathways to replace the ones you've lost. There's exciting new pioneering work in the pioneering phase. Children with learning disabilities who may not have the easy connections that we have between brain areas. So these very difficult, repetitive tasks are intended to create those pathways. It's not mere repetition of easy things, it's repetition of harder and harder things. We did develop brainology in New York. We actually hired a bunch of people who came from Silicon Valley. It was part of the dot-com bust. We were able to hire them at below market value, or at the new low market value, and they helped us create our program. But bringing it out here is where it has really flourished, where I've met people who can take it in new directions and help us get it out to people who need it. What started me on my path were a couple of things, a couple of experiences I had. One was that my 6th grade teacher seated us around the room in IQ order. And only the smartest, quote, smartest kids could do even the everyday chores like washing the blackboard or carrying the flag in the assembly. I didn't think that was right. Over time, that as a result of that experience, I had really developed a fixed mindset. Even though I had always been successful, failure loomed large as this very threatening possibility. And that's what I set out to study, how people cope with failure, what it means to them. And over time, I discovered the mindsets that made failure either a threatening and undermining possibility, or on the other hand, an experience that you could really learn from, often a blessing in disguise. So the hallmark of Silicon Valley is not just that individual entrepreneurs are willing to take risks and fail, but that people are willing to support them in taking risks and failing. And they're willing to support these great ideas over and over and over till they succeed. I think that's unique. Another region says, I want to become Silicon Valley. What they mean is, I want to replicate that success, and I want to replicate it right away. They don't realize it's a whole process of trial and error, trial and failure, both on the part of entrepreneurs and the people who support them. Fixed mindset leaders, entrepreneurs, leaders, CEOs, can be very inspiring, but they often have to be infallible. They have to be know-it-all, or they feel threatened by even their own people's great ideas and successes. And ultimately, that limits their own ability to lead their companies to new places. Whereas growth mindset CEOs, entrepreneurs, are kind of in it together, love great advice from others, want to know where they're wrong, want to learn new things, want to learn every aspect of their companies and how these can be improved. So it's not that a fixed mindset entrepreneur can't be brilliant and exciting, but there's that limitation of having to be right, never wanting to fail. I've read a fair amount about the Renaissance period in Italy, and what I've learned is that a new view of human potential emerged during this period, a view that people could make themselves into things they hadn't been before, could invent themselves in new ways or develop themselves in new ways. And that's a growth mindset. That's exactly what's happening in Silicon Valley. People thinking, I can create myself in new ways, I can create things in new ways. And this just unleashes a period of unprecedented creativity and growth.
That's great.
I think those parallels are remarkable.